Hey everybody, Lori and I talked ahead of time, and so I'm going to go first, and then Lori has some awesome stuff when I'm done. So what we're talking about today is we've all kind of been thrown into the Zoom thing. Some of you have done it before, some of you this is all new, and so we have some steps to make your experience more professional. So hopefully you can attract more clients, build better relationships, and then also how to communicate in these sessions because it's so different than what we're used to in person. So I'm going to address more of the business part, the tactical, strategic part of coming onto Zoom. And one of the things I think we all need to remember is that even in a Zoom meeting, this could be someone's first impression of you. So some of you, I've never met you and you've never met me. Some of you I already know. So this is the first time you might be seeing me. And so immediately your brain's making an impression. So keep that in mind when you come to a networking event online, or even just a board meeting or a coffee chat. The way you present yourself in the meeting is their impression. And even if they've met you before, this is just solidifying. And that's just kind of how the brain works. And we all know a first impression is really difficult to overcome in the future. So I notice a lot of you are already doing some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So that is awesome. If you're not, do not feel judged, please. don't scramble to like do the thing that we're suggesting. Just, take what works for you, what works for your business or what you do, and just leave the rest. And you can start something new going forward, or just spend this time to meet everybody. So, the goal for most of our meetings, at least for me, and I assume for a lot of you, is to either get our message heard, meet new people, increase our know, like, and trust with people that we've already maybe had a relationship with. And so face-to-face is the best way to do that. So the first thing I want to challenge you to do is, if you are coming to some kind of online meeting, is to use your video. If it is possible, use your video. I see Kathleen's face. I recognize her from a Wings meeting, and I can put those two together and say, oh, that's right. We were going to do a coffee chat and we never followed up on that, because I see her face. And think about, I know I'm terrible with names. So if I see just a black square with your name, I'm probably not going to remember who you are. But if I see your face and it looks similar to how I'm going to see you in person at our, when we start having Wings, yeah, I'm going to have that recognition of who you are and hopefully what you do. So if you can use your video, I highly recommend using your video. The other thing is, if you're not using your video, how much easier is it to not be present in the meeting? Because you can be doing other things. You're not, like, even though we're on a screen, I still feel like I have eye contact with a lot of you, at least whoever fits in my little grid right here. So it does matter, and the face-to-face matters. Seeing you guys smile if I say something, seeing you do a thumbs up, it's more interactive to me, and I feel more connected to you, even though we're virtual. So if you can use your screen, even if it's not perfect, I still think it's better than not. And we've all been in our car. We've all had to go take a meeting in our car because we have kids at home or dogs or whatever, and that's okay. If it's going to be detrimental to your impression, then sure, don't use the video. We've all been in those spots in quarantine as well. Okay, so second, one of the very biggest things, and I see so many of you already doing this, is to have your camera at eye level. So we want the meeting to be as close to in-person as we can. Anything in our control to make it similar to an in-person meeting is what we want to do. So when I'm talking to you at Wings and we're having a one-on-one conversation, I'm looking at you in the eye, unless we're like in line for food and then you're doing that like side conversation thing behind your back. But otherwise, we're talking face to face. I'm not talking to you like this at a Wings meeting, or like this, or like this. I mean, we're talking face to face. So the more you can make your conversation feel eye level, the better. Did I freeze? Oh, okay. Everybody froze. Sorry. So what I was saying is if the more you can make it like an in-person interaction, the better. So you can get something like this for your phone. Very easy to use. They're on Amazon. They're very inexpensive, and mount that. Most professionals I know are using boxes or some kind of contraption that you don't want to touch once you push play because you don't want it to all tumble. I love the like photo boxes that you can just get at a craft store or Walmart. I feel like they're sturdy. Some people use books. Just test it out and make sure it's stable. But I would rather have you have some crazy contraption, but it looks really professional from the front, than just flip open your laptop and we're all looking up your nose for the whole meeting. So remember that first impression. You want to look professional and you want as much eye contact as possible. All right, so no up the nose, no side face. And the goal is that someone's going to remember you when we see each other in person. And the best way is to have that facial recognition. All right. And I kind of talk fast, so if you need me to slow down, just, you know, give me the breaks. Lighting. So you guys all look fabulous with your lighting. Remember you want to sit with a window facing you. I have a window behind me, but I have the blinds closed, so it just kind of lights up the room. We're not in witness protection. This is not a Dateline anonymous interview where the face is black. I've had that for a conversation and it was really difficult because I was just, kind of talking to a silhouette and I couldn't see facial expressions or who was talking next, and it was kind of awkward. So again, on Amazon for $30-$40, you can get one of those like professional looking photographer with like the umbrella, feel really fancy. If you do videos often, or you're going to you're going to be doing Zoom once a week, it's a pretty cheap investment. If your office is like in a basement or in a space where you don't have great lighting, it's not just that like one light, shining on your face. So check your lighting, experiment different times of day. It's going to be different, but kind of figure out where your zone is and where your perfect setup is. And if you can just leave it. If not, even if you have to put tape on your desk of this is where my box goes, this is where my lighting is, the simpler you can make it, the better. It does not have to be big and fancy by any means. All right, the next one is sound. And I hope I don't offend anyone, but if you are in a meeting, my guideline is if there's 4 or more people, I'm going to be muted the whole time. So if someone else is speaking, I'm muted. If it's a coffee chat, obviously you're not going to, unmute every time it's your turn to talk. But it is really distracting for the person speaking, or maybe I'm just super distractible, but it's really distracting to me if I hear like your glasses clinking, or if you're typing on your keyboard, or if your dog is barking. It gets me off track on what I was speaking about. And so you wouldn't do that, like picture in a real meeting. If you were having a board meeting, your dog's probably not in there. Your kids aren't in there. Your doorbell's not ringing. So if you can mute until it is your turn, it's just kind of a nice etiquette thing for whoever it is that's speaking. Also headphones. I see a lot of you with headphones, even the cheap little earbuds. My whole family is not hearing our conversation. Also, it actually makes dogs quieter, because if your dog is hearing new voices, it makes them anxious. They're like, what's going on? Who are all these people and why can't I find them? So headphones work really well for that. It also makes your voice clear, because sometimes if you're sitting far back or your air circulation's going on, it's hard for people to hear. And then it's really easy to control. The other thing, sometimes if any of you guys record videos or do interviews, you want to have headphones on, because otherwise the other person's audio comes through your speakers and creates an echo. And that's really hard to talk through. All right, next one is your background. So let's say, pretend I am a professional organizer, and I come on a meeting with you and we're going to be talking about, I want you to pay me thousands of dollars for me to organize your home. And behind me is like crazy boxes and it just looks really disorganized. I'm going to be really afraid of booking a session with someone. Or if you're an accountant, I picture my accountant. I want someone who is organized and very left-brained, it has their stuff together. So if they're in this crazy weird space with stuff all over, it just makes me a little cautious. Versus if I'm coming to talk to you and you are, an attorney, and it looks like you're in an office space or you have a neutral background, it's just one less thing for me to think about or worry about. If it is possible to brand your background, we're having internet issues, so I can't be in my office, unfortunately. I'm on my third call with Spectrum later today. But in my office, I have brand color things on the wall, or I have something with my name, with my company name on it, so that when I'm on a call with someone, it just looks familiar. It just looks like they're in the right place. So if you can find a background that fits what you do, I always think neutral. If you're not sure, neutral is best. If you have to put up something behind you, put up something behind you. Find a blank wall. You just want the least distracting background as possible, if that makes sense. And then just two more things, and then I'll take questions if anyone has questions they want to ask. How many of you, raise your hands, how many of you are on your phone? Most people on your laptops? Okay. I was going to suggest that everybody, you do what you have to do, but I love going live on my laptop instead. I can see the gallery view. It's easier to see the chat and work with my different tools on the bottom, but then I get to see all your faces. If I do it on my phone, I see me and whoever's speaking, and I don't see everybody else to trigger like, oh, I haven't talked to Dorothy in forever, I should message her, because you're seeing everybody and it just feels more interactive. So I'm a bigger fan of the laptop. The other thing, when you use your laptop, you are less likely to be working on your laptop, right? And Lori will address this more, but when you're in a meeting, be in the meeting. And that's the other thing with the eye contact and looking at the camera. If I'm looking at the camera and smiling and nodding as, someone's speaking, I'm making a positive interaction with them, and it doesn't look like I'm not interested. And speaking to that, I did do a coffee chat once with someone, and they had it on their phone, was the Zoom kind of set down in the corner. So the entire conversation, the person was typing on their computer and I was looking at the side of their face. And it just kind of felt like, why am I here? Because you're not paying attention to me. And I could go do something else instead. So just keep those kind of things in mind. The very last thing, if you cannot use your video, make sure, and it looks like all of you guys have this, make sure your name is your professional name and that your picture is a professional headshot where you're looking at the camera. So like Molly, I see her picture right now. She's still looking at the camera. And even though I know logically it is a picture, it still feels like she's looking at me. So if you have a picture, just make sure it's professional. I know when I've done Zoom calls for groups, I had one that came on once that said, Elsa's Castle, or it was something with Frozen. And I was like, do I let this person in the meeting? Like, who is this person? And it turns out she did parties online as Elsa. So it made sense, but I had no idea who she was or what her name was. And so if I'm looking at you and thinking, oh, I haven't talked to Dorothy in forever, I might jot a note, message Dorothy, because I see her name and I remember who she is. Or if someone says their name and says, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I'm a, graphic designer specializing for realtors, and I'm a realtor, I'm going to jot that person's name down. But if it says my iPhone, if I didn't catch their name, I don't remember. So just, that's a kind of fast and furious 7 tips for making your experience a little better. Does anybody have any comments or any questions on any of that? If so, just feel free to unmute and chime in.
I have one question.
Sure.
It's a little personal. I don't know if it's the same for you, probably not, but I am foreign, and I feel that when I start talking, of course, people can notice that I have an accent, and when you're trying to make a first impression, then you get nervous, and sometimes I commit like grammar mistakes, things like that. So my question is, should I mention something before I start talking that, I don't know, English is not my first language, or should I just pretend this is not an issue? That's my question about the first impression.
Yeah, I mean, Lori can jump in on here too with the communication aspect. I had never met you before, and I heard you introduce yourself at the beginning, and I just thought, oh, what a cool accent. Like, I don't think you have to apologize for it. I think you just do you and be yourself, and hopefully whoever you're with gives you grace. And I think you probably notice it more than anyone else does.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? That's one other thing too. If you have other tabs open on your computer, like Facebook or anything, close those before your meeting, because otherwise during your meeting, you're going to keep getting the, and on my phone, I always do airplane mode so that I'm not like checking my phone the whole time. If nobody else has questions or comments, then I can turn it over to Lori to talk about communication in an online space and how that's different than what we're used to. Lori?
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Robin. Mary Donner, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, I had a comment, and I just wanted to let you know, my dear Miss Chitton, is that it? That I love your accent. I could listen to that all day long. I listen to, in what I do and where I am, it's very diverse, and I listen to a lot of different accents, and they're all wonderful. So you should, if it was me, I would say embrace that, because that makes you more special, and people will recognize you more often just because of that little extra that you have when you talk.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It's just because it's hard to be in meetings. You get a little uncomfortable, and you get, I don't know, you want to do your best, and then sometimes you just mess up a few things. So I get concerned, especially with the language, but I really appreciate your comment.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. So thanks, Robin, for all those fabulous tips, and I appreciated all of them, and I appreciate you talking about giving each other grace, and I certainly think that that's hopefully something that we have all been experiencing, as well as giving as we navigate this virtual environment. So before I dive in, Molly, this is where I was hoping we might separate into breakout groups. Molly is the host, so she is, I've asked her, we're gonna randomly separate, and it looks like there's 16, 17, Robin and I, we can join a group. So maybe groups of 2, let's see, 4 would be 16. So maybe groups of 3 or 4. And before we get distributed randomly for breakout groups, what I'd like you to do in your breakout group for just a few minutes is talk about what you've noticed that's working during Zoom, particularly related to the conversation or the exchange, and also anything that Robin mentioned as well that's been working, either for you or what you've noticed with other people. So again, I'd like you to, when you get in your breakout room, spend a few minutes, and we've got some time. So maybe about 5 minutes, we'll give everybody 5 minutes to share a little bit about what you've noticed that's been working to make Zoom meetings positive, productive, and successful, either something you're doing or something you notice someone else doing. Thanks, Molly. Thanks for bringing us back. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that breakout. And so I'd like to share, if somebody wants to unmute and share, what was one thing that that your group acknowledged that has been working, that you've noticed has been working?
I'll say something.
Thanks, Linda.
So we said that we found the thing that was happening sometimes in the in-person groups is that people would always sit next to the same people or talk to the same people. And we found in the Zoom meetings that you actually get to know all of the people or more of the people better. And so it's just a different dynamic than the in-person meetings.
Ooh, awesome. Thanks for sharing. Who else? Ellen.
I could share. We like the screen share, you know, being able to share, and anybody in the group could share if they have something that they want to discuss. So that's very helpful, and people are more prepared.
Awesome. Thank you. How about one more? Someone like to share? Mary.
Okay, so I like to share too, but in this case, I think what came out of our group is that no matter what we look like at any moment, we should have our pictures out there. I've done this with names too, and there are people in our office where we have a meeting every week, and all I see is AB. I see nothing else.
Oh.
And although I know who it is and I know how intelligent and wonderful this person is, I would love to see her face. Whether she thinks it's beautiful or not, I do. So you need to be able to talk to people, and just talking to a name. Okay, let's get everybody. Donna Adams, you up here too. Just for a second, and then we'll let you get off again. But this is how we know who the group is. It would be like having a bag over your head at a face-to-face meeting. So that's, I think that was a positive that came out of it, although I was the person with only a name. Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for sharing. Ooh, yikes. Ooh, thought that was on vibrate. All right, so thank you for that. And I wanted to provide an opportunity for you to engage in the breakout, because certainly that is something that can help us continue to be engaged in a meeting. And so couple of things I want to talk about meetings in general, and this is person to person or on Zoom, is 4 primary reasons to hold a meeting. And you may or may not have considered this, or when you hold meetings, it may be something to think about in the future. But really, the 4 primary reasons for holding a meeting are to, 1, influence others, right? We want to influence others. 2, to make decisions. 3, to solve problems. And 4, to strengthen relationships. And certainly you may be having a meeting or been part of a meeting where all 4 of those things are taking place, but we certainly want to be mindful of the reasons why we're holding meetings. So conversational challenges that we have with meeting virtually, we talked about some of them in our small groups. I'm sure you did as well. And Robin mentioned a few in her tips that she shared. We're not in the same room. So we talked a little bit about that being maybe a good thing, in that the side conversations can't happen, or as Linda mentioned, you know, sitting next to the same people all the time. But it also can be a challenge. We're not in the same room. Of course, Robin mentioned distractions abound. And so we really need to be mindful of those distractions and minimize them as much as possible in order to have a successful meeting. We can't read nonverbals. So if I'm looking at the camera, I can sort of see all of you, but I can't see every one of you clearly. And then if I go to look at each of you around the room, I'm only seeing one person at a time. And so it's really hard to read nonverbals during these meetings. And of course, that presents a challenge. We've got other work to get done. It was mentioned, earlier that, I'm sitting in my basement, and I'm at a table, and there are a bunch of papers strewn all over the place. And usually what I try and do is get those piles and papers out of the way so that I'm not distracted by them. And so we want to be aware of those distractions and the other work that we have to get done. And then in these meetings and other challenges, there might be some people who have a lot to say, and there might be some people who have nothing to say. And so, like face-to-face meetings and conversations, those things occur as well. And so we need to be mindful of ourselves and how we're showing up, as well as navigating, the virtual room, as it were. Whoops. So with those challenges in mind, I'd like us to consider some key conversation strategies. And you'll probably notice that they're not too different from the strategies that we need to have when having conversations face to face. I think one of the big things is our mindfulness about them certainly needs to be greater, and then we need to be even more present in the situation. So one of the first ones is when we're in a virtual meeting like this, and when we're in a conversation with others, we want to create comfort and safety, and this helps build trust. So comfort and safety virtually may be actually are many of the things that Robin was mentioning. How do we create some comfort, some safety, the know, like, and trust that Robin talked about? We have our picture, we have our name, we have a pleasing background. And so just like if we were having a conversation one-on-one, excuse me, I might sit next to you rather than stand over you. I would certainly want to be listening to what you had to say, which actually goes into some of the other strategies that I'm going to talk about. So that comfort and safety is an important one. And I want to acknowledge something that we heard Molly do related to comfort and safety. As the facilitator, the host of this meeting, she created some of that comfort and safety and trust by addressing some protocols, talking about everybody muting themselves. As she was dialing into sharing her screen, she shared some things that she was going to do. So either if you're the facilitator or even as a participant, what kinds of things, we call them meeting norms or we call them protocols when we're face to face. What kind of virtual meeting norms can we create or request as we're experiencing life virtually? Thanks, Kathleen. So that's another way to create that comfort and safety. A second strategy for conversations is asking questions. Again, this is very important in face-to-face conversations, but virtually, we want to be able to ask questions first. We've got a lot to say. We have opinions to share. We have things that we want to make sure get out into the universe during these conversations. But asking questions and being curious is so important. And when we consider asking questions, that allows us to be even more present with our fellow attendees. when we pause to think about what that question might be. Listen to connect is another way, and listen to connect virtually, but listening to connect with the other person that we're talking with. Again, this is a huge strategy for being face to face, but when we're listening to connect within these virtual meetings, Robin mentioned it as well in regards to where we're looking. If we're looking down and we're talking like this, or we're distracted by our dog or our child, we're not able to connect. And so we want to be present by eliminating those distractions. And we need to be able to act very similarly as much as possible in virtual conversations as we would in face-to-face conversations. So when we listen to connect, the phrase I like to share is, when we listen to connect, we don't judge or reject. So listen to connect, not judge or reject, is so powerful. And I think that's important in our virtual space as well. We talked about giving grace, and that's another way we could say that. If we're listening to connect and we're not judging, we're not rejecting others, then we're going to be able to have a more successful conversation. Another strategy, another key conversation strategy, and particularly I think in the virtual space, is the idea of pausing, being a little bit more purposeful in our pauses. I saw that as I invited you to share. I even felt, if we can feel virtually, I felt people pause to kind of take a look and see, okay, who is going to share first. And this is a very gracious, okay, I don't know why that's still happening. Sorry. Robin, I've done a bad bad virtual meeting.
No, you didn't. It's all good.
I know this is such, I was just getting ready to say that's actually my timer to stop and pray during the middle of the day. So I push snooze and it's reminding me again. So I'll take care of that later. But what I was just getting ready to say is, this group in particular, I've noticed, is so full of grace, and you're very kind and giving, and because we're all human, and this is new, even though we've been doing it for what seems like forever, 9 or 10 weeks, I guess. I think it's still very new. And so by being able to generously utilize pauses and even silence, that can be really powerful, and that can help minimize interruptions. And I know we don't mean to interrupt people. That's not our intention, but it's hard to not interrupt in virtually, unless we've got some protocols, unless we're pausing, looking around, seeing who's waving or who's turned off their mic. And so being able to generously utilize that pause and silence can be really powerful, particularly during virtual conversations. And then being flexible, and that's that grace piece as well. A key conversation strategy is being able to be flexible and provide that grace. And one of the ways that we can initiate that is by sharing our intentions. Now, my intention is not to step over anybody here or step on anybody's words in this virtual conversation. If I don't see you raise your hand, or if I don't hear you right away, I'm going to work real hard to make sure that I not interrupt anybody. So if we can share our intentions and be flexible in sharing the space with one another. So those, excuse me, so those are, let's see, Robin had 7, so looks like I've got 5. Create comfort and safety, ask questions, listen to connect, generously utilizing the pause and silence, and then being flexible and providing grace. Um, The last thing I want to share, and then we can open it up for some more questions and conversation, is I mentioned this a little bit about if you're facilitating, when you're facilitating or leading a group, a virtual group, and also in person, is you want to be aware of passive observers. And certainly, as Robin mentioned, you know, if we're not sharing our face and it's just our name, you know, we don't know what they're doing on the other side of the screen. And so we want to be able to, as facilitators and leaders, we want to be able to engage participants. So, you know, we could take even some time, you know, today, if we have it, to, you know, get into another breakout room. You know, having a chance to work in small groups is huge. If we give small groups a purpose or intention or a problem to solve, that's going to engage people in a different way than this full room of 16, 20 of us. Creating opportunities and expectations for personal, professional responsibility. So again, that setting intentions, and Molly helped model that inadvertently when she got started. And so we want to be able to set expectations for ourselves as we step into a meeting, into a conversation, as well as a personal and professional responsibility and expectations as a leader and a facilitator of the meeting. When leading a conversation in a virtual meeting, you want to consider being able to create experiences with facts and stories. And so I haven't shared a bunch of stories just yet, but certainly we had a chance to share some of those stories when we were in our breakout rooms. And so we want people to feel the problem that they're working on, or in my case, when I asked you to break into your small groups, I wanted you to focus on the positives. Robin had just shared 7 great positive strategies about how we can improve our presence, our professional presence. And so I didn't want us to flip into everything that's wrong with Zoom. I wanted to keep that positive momentum going, and by inviting you to focus on what's been working well. So being able to help your group focus on the things where they can solve problems and focus on solutions is one way to share facts and stories. And then lastly, I've already mentioned, you know, utilizing breakout rooms, you know, in meetings, face-to-face meetings and conversations, you know, we'll take breaks, particularly if we've been meeting together for a while. And so breakout rooms are a nice way to re-engage and mix things up a little bit. And then it gives other people responsibility for that participation. And actually, I have yet, I'm just thinking about it now, I don't think I've been in a virtual meeting that where we've taken like a 5-minute bio break. And so, you know, that's no criticism. It's just an aha. I mean, last night I was on a county board meeting, and we chatted for 2 hours, and we never formally stopped to take a break. Now, certainly I could, you know, stop my video and, you know, take care of business if I need to. But you know, we do that in face-to-face meetings, so that might be something, you know, setting a timer, making sure that, you know, people come back, letting them know we're going to get started at a particular time. So that's just another way, as we're facilitating and leading conversations, how we can minimize those passive observers. So with that, those are my tips and strategies for enhancing your professional conversations during these virtual meetings. So I'll open it up to questions or comments.
One thing that I wanted to add is using the chat. I think that's a really great way to engage. If people have a question, they could put in the chat, and it's really good for the shy people that don't want to talk in front of other people. So it's another way.
Yes, thank you. I meant to put that in my notes. Absolutely. Using the chat, and then even the
Oh yeah, the reactions with the raising the hands and
yeah, reactions and raising the hand. And that could be something I didn't set that up. Molly didn't, and that's okay. You know, it's, but that is, you know, that is another, the chat is a great way to assist us, as well as raising the hand and reactions. Yes, Ellen, you had.
one other thing, using a poll. Sometimes using a poll, if you use the poll in the beginning, I mean, everybody kind of buys in, and then ever so often, so that helps.
Yes, yes. And there are so many features too. We didn't even dig in. I mean, there's whiteboards and you can annotate and all of that within Zoom. And I'm getting ready to figure those out because I have to teach a class at Aurora University in July. But even just for these sorts of fabulous networking where we're looking to strengthen relationships and share our business and perhaps, you know, create new business or new power partnerships. There's a lot of great strategies that Zoom provides as well.
Excuse me, what?
Mary.
Oh, is it P-O-L-L or P-O-L-E?
P-O-L-L.
Okay.
Let's see.
I haven't heard of that before.
It doesn't look like I can do it, but maybe Molly can throw one up. It's just you ask a question and it comes up on the screen, and you know, what's your favorite color, or what'd you have for dinner last night, or well, more multiple choice. But then what's really cool is it gives you the results. It can show you the results, which I find fun. And to Ellen's point, it's definitely another way to minimize that passive observer, passive participant. And yeah, Ellen.
It's also a way to find out who's in the room. So let's say Lori wanted to find out people's, you know, background or whatever, you know, especially if she's teaching a course.
And I actually don't have that in my bar right now, so it must be something you have to set up in settings before there are a lot of things where you check boxes in Zoom, and so that must be something that you have to set up in advance. But I will look into that. Thank you so much for mentioning it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it's good to do your questions ahead of time too. You don't want to do them on the fly at the meeting. It takes too much time.
Yeah. If you guys want to play around with these things, you can just set up a Zoom call with a friend and say, do you want to set up a Zoom call? I want to try out putting people in rooms, or, you know, you don't have to wait till your actual meeting. Just have a friend hop on sometime and play around with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anna, I see Anna made a note. With the polls, I think you have to upgrade in Zoom. I think you have to purchase the basic settings. So you're right. In the free version, I don't think you can do polls, Anna. I think you're right. Lays, you had a question.
Yes, I have a question, both for Lori and Robin. My question is regarding the presentation. How important do you think it's to have or not to have a presentation? I mean, because
what type of meeting are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because if you want to have a one-on-one, you put the presentation, you cannot see directly the person. At the same time, it's easier to follow through the topics if you're explaining something. So that was my question about the importance. When should you have a presentation, or when shouldn't you have?
I think you can always send it ahead of time. If it's a one-on-one and it's information that they need to have, I think it'd be great for them to have it ahead of time. But I guess it depends on what type of presentation you're doing. And usually with the screen share, there's still a little box at the top. Like I could still see Molly. It's harder as the user because you can't see everyone's expressions necessarily as they're, you know, as you're giving the presentation. So I guess it would depend on if it's necessary for your end goal of the meeting or not.
Yeah, I would concur.
I would just say, from the perspective of somebody who's facilitated a lot of these meetings, and then also with our committees, it's very difficult to have something on screen share and try to coax participation, because I can't see as easily. If you're a participant and not the facilitator, you can put up a side-by-side with your screen share, so you can see a little better if it's a one-on-one, and I think that helps. But when you're in large groups like this, especially if you have something up, you can only see, 5 or 6 people at a time. And so that is a challenge. I guess a follow-up question, and this might be to Lori on this, what advice do you have for coaxing more communication out in these groups? I think to me, it's been like pulling teeth sometimes to get people to have an opinion or jump in a way that is not, I don't typically have that problem in a face-to-face setting. So do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as long as it seems like we've been doing these, in many ways it still feels so new, right? And because today, I'm meeting people for the first time, and so that know, like, and trust, perhaps that discomfort of, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and just some of those stories that we tell ourselves. I could see how that might that might be a distraction for those conversations. I think asking questions, like Ellen said, using the chat is a great feature. I think using those breakout rooms may provide an opportunity, because if you think about it, when we're in when we've got even like a wings meeting, although wings meetings, people are very open and willing to talk, but when you're in a room of 30, 40 people, there might be maybe 5 or 6 that will speak up in the whole group. But if you have turn and talk, or you break people into threes, then the chatter, just goes and goes. So I think it's I guess what's coming to mind is providing an opportunity for small group, if possible, as well as the whole group, and then asking open-ended questions that people can either put in the chat or share. And then I think, again, kind of identifying some sort of practice, norm, protocol for inviting people in. We've been doing great with waving hands. If we use the raise hand, if alphabetically, or going around the room, and just finding ways to invite people.
Sure.
So those are some thoughts. But what else is coming up for anybody in the group? Dorothy.
I just, as I was listening, I have 2 comments. One, Molly, I've been in some of the wings things in the meetings, and sometimes literally everything I needed to know got answered in the presentation, and I didn't have any questions after that. My personal opinion with the sharing, it depends on what it's on. Everything's easier on a laptop. I do not like doing Zoom on my phone because you can only see one person. It drives me nuts. I will make sure I have a laptop with me if I'm going to do one, just because it's just disconcerting on the phone. I don't feel I'm fully present with the group. The other thing I was going to say is, I've been in some really, really big meetings, and the use of chat is phenomenal, especially if in the beginning, as I don't remember which one it was, Robin or Lori, that said, use it and let people know the rules ahead of time. Let them know that we want all your questions on chat, and it works perfect, especially when there's 2 facilitators or 2 people like Lori and Robin, as one speaking and the chats are coming in, the other one reminds, because if you miss the things that are in the chat, then people are like, well, they never answered my question. But yet, like, you kind of have to tag team is what I've seen, that has worked really, really well. And then some have like private Facebook groups or something afterwards where you answer the questions that came up, or they send them out in a separate document afterwards to everybody. And those have been really successful. I've been in some been in some good ones and some bad ones, but a lot of times, you know me, I like to talk. So if I don't ask a question, it's because everything was answered. And that seriously has happened in a few of the meetings I've been in.
Mm. Thanks for sharing, Dorothy. And you said something that resonated with me in regards to a strategy I love to share. It's story taming instead of storytelling. And when you were talking about being on your phone and you can't see everybody, and I think Robin asked, who's on the laptop and who's on your phone? That's a great question to know, because now that we've been doing this a while, if I'm on my phone, I can't see everybody. Well, if Molly's the facilitator and she's on her laptop and she can see everybody, then if I'm not engaged or interacting or whatever it might be, she could create a story in her head about, oh, that Lori, she's not being engaged. What's going on with her? Not that Molly would create that kind of story, but we're humans. Sometimes we do that. And so rather than telling that story and letting that, go, we run up the ladder of conclusions and we go down a negative rabbit hole or whatever, we can tame those stories by acknowledging who's on their phone, who's on their laptop. I think it was JJ said she's in a parking lot and, doesn't want to be on camera. I mean, if we can share that, then we can minimize those stories that distract us. So that came up. Yes, Ellen.
Lori and Dorothy, just to add, I've been on different Zooms where the first question they ask you is, put your name, your business, and how you're feeling at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going on in people's heads, if they're stressed or if, they're overworked or feeling great, you just start that way. So that's a good way to engage them. And also I was on a call with a Tony Robbins person, and they have you do the chat every other question almost, put this in, put that in. And you're so busy doing the chat that your mind can't go anywhere else.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's great. Robin, any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
Not that I can think of. I don't know if I'm frozen on your guys' end. I can't see anyone anymore, so.
Yeah, we can't see you either. There you are.
Not that I can think of. Just keep practicing.
Yeah. Keep practicing and be sure to give yourself and others that grace and flexibility. So Molly, with that, I think if there's no other questions or comments, we'll turn it back to you. I know we're might be wrapping up a little early, but it's nice outside. We can get outside for a few minutes maybe.